10 years after a California teenager vanished, her mother opened a high school yearbook. On a page filled with cheering students at a summer pep rally, she froze. In the shadows, behind the bleachers, was a girl whose face looked unmistakably familiar. The date on the photo? July 29th, 2016, 3 months after her daughter had disappeared. If that really was Sarah Holden, why didn't she come home? Spring nights in Santa Cruz carry a particular sound: the crash of waves against the boardwalk pilings, the faint buzz of neon lights reflecting off wet asphalt, the laughter of tourists mixing with the rumble of roller coasters in the distance. To most, the city feels like a postcard come to life: surfboards, ice cream stands, teenagers walking home from the library under street lamps. But beauty has a way of hiding shadows. And on one Tuesday night in April 2016, the shadows swallowed someone whole. 17-year-old Sarah Holden was a junior at Santa Cruz High. Quiet, studious, the kind of girl who kept her Instagram locked and her grades high. Friends described her as steady, never late, never reckless, the sort of teenager parents counted on. She lived with her mother, Elaine, an emergency room nurse who worked long shifts but knew every detail of her daughter's routine. They were close, almost conspiratorial. Elaine used to say, "Sarah's my anchor," and Sarah would roll her eyes, but smile. On April 12th, Sarah did what she always did. School ended at 3. She grabbed a sandwich, then met her best friend Maya Ortiz at the downtown public library. The two of them had a ritual: find a corner table, spread out textbooks, and grind through homework while the sky outside shifted from gold to indigo. That week, finals were coming, and both girls had the tired look of teenagers who lived on coffee and highlighters. Around 7:45, Maya began to pack up. "My mom's calling me home," she said, sliding her history book into her bag. Sarah glanced up from a stack of calculus notes. "Go ahead," she answered softly. "I'll stay a little longer. I want to finish this chapter." That was the last conversation anyone can confirm. At 8:37 p.m., library records show Sarah checking out one last book, an anthology of American poetry. A security camera caught her pushing open the glass doors, hoodie zipped up, backpack over one shoulder. Outside, the streetlights hummed, the sidewalks damp from ocean mist. The walk to her house should have taken 12 minutes. Meanwhile, across town, Elaine was brewing coffee before her night shift. She glanced at the clock. 8:40. Usually Sarah texted to say she was leaving the library. No message had arrived. Elaine shrugged it off at first. Teenagers forget. But habit is a powerful thing, and Sarah never broke her habits. By 8:50, a Ring camera 2 blocks from the library picked her up. Fuzzy black and white footage of a slim figure turning onto a side street. The timestamp read 8:51. That would be the last confirmed sighting. The night air in Santa Cruz was cool, 55 degrees, just sharp enough to make breath visible. Sarah's sneakers scuffed the pavement as she cut past shuttered cafes and a laundromat humming under fluorescent lights. She clutched her backpack strap with one hand. Witnesses would later recall seeing a white work van idling near the library, ladder rack silhouetted against the streetlight. Whether Sarah noticed it, no one can say. At 9:05, Elaine picked up her phone and dialed, straight to voicemail. No ring, no delay, just the cold, automated voice. "The number you have reached is not available." She hung up. Tried again. Same result. For a woman trained in emergency rooms, Elaine knew what adrenaline felt like. But this was different. This was dread, sharp and specific. Sarah didn't turn off her phone. ever. She set down her coffee, heart hammering, and listened. The house was silent. Outside, the sound of waves drifted faintly through the night. By 9:20, she was pacing the living room. By 9:30, she was already pulling on a jacket. And by 9:40, Elaine Holden was driving the route between the library and home, headlights sweeping across empty sidewalks, calling her daughter's name into the dark. Sarah never answered. At 8:51 p.m., the timestamp on a neighbor's Ring camera flickered to life. A grainy figure in a dark hoodie crossed the corner of Walnut Avenue, backpack slung low. The clip was only 4 seconds long, but investigators would later slow it down frame by frame. The stride, the profile, even the enamel pins glinting faintly on the backpack strap. Everything matched 17-year-old Sarah Holden. After that, she seemed to vanish into thin air. The route from the library to her house was short, a straight line broken only by small alleys and storefronts. It was a walk Sarah had done dozens of times. The night was quiet. A laundromat's neon open sign buzzed faintly, and a coffee roastery's exhaust fan sent ribbons of smoke into the air. At 8:56 p.m., Sarah's phone emitted one last digital breadcrumb. Find My iPhone registered a final ping near the service alley behind that roastery. A strip of cracked pavement lined with dumpsters and shadowed loading docks. The data would later show coordinates fixed, then silence. No more pings. The device either powered down, was destroyed, or slipped into something designed to block signals. For detectives, that 5-minute window, 8:51 to 8:56, became the black hole of the case. At the time, no one noticed. Customers were closing laptops in nearby cafes. Parents were putting children to bed. Life in Santa Cruz ticked on. But in hindsight, every second mattered. A man named Luis Ortega, who ran a taco truck parked across from the library, remembered something. Around 9 o'clock, just as he was shutting his service window, he saw a white work van roll past slowly. Not a delivery vehicle he recognized, just plain white, with a ladder rack on top. Headlights dim. He thought he saw a teenage girl near the curb, stepping toward the passenger side. Could have been her, he said later, but I wasn't close enough to swear on it. Other witnesses disagreed. Some recalled only the van. Others said they noticed nothing at all. Memory has a way of bending under pressure. Still, the image of that white van became a haunting possibility, another shadow in a city filled with them. Meanwhile, back at home, Elaine Holden's calls kept going unanswered. At 9:05 p.m., the call to voicemail felt wrong in a way only a parent could understand. She called again at 9:06 and again at 9:07. Each time, the same cold message: the number you have reached is unavailable. Elaine tried to reason with herself. Maybe the battery died. Maybe Sarah dropped the phone. But Sarah never let her phone die. Not once in the past 2 years. Elaine knew that because she paid the bills, checked the logs, and sometimes teased her daughter about always being plugged in. By 9:20, the reasoning collapsed into dread. On the streets, Sarah's figure was gone. No more Ring cameras picked her up. No store footage showed her passing. It was as if she had walked into the alley and melted into the fog. Later, detectives would canvass the area. They knocked on doors, asked for footage. But 2016 Santa Cruz was a patchwork of coverage. Some homes had cameras, some didn't. The one shop that might have captured the alley had closed early that night, system offline. What remained was the ping, the digital heartbeat at 8:56 that abruptly flatlined. Forensics teams would say the signal loss could mean many things: a phone turned off, a battery pulled, or the device shoved into a metal container. But none of those explanations came with answers to the bigger question: why there? Why then? And with whom? A mother's timeline unfolded in parallel. At 9:30, Elaine was still pacing. By 9:40, she was in her car, headlights sweeping the very streets her daughter should have walked minutes earlier. She slowed at every corner, rolled down the window, and called into the dark. Sarah. No one answered. Somewhere between the ring clip at 8:51 and the last ping at 8:56, a 17-year-old disappeared from the streets of Santa Cruz. The gap was only 5 minutes long, but 5 minutes was enough to fracture a life. And for Elaine Holden, those 5 minutes would echo for the next decade. By 9:40 p.m., Elaine Holden was already behind the wheel of her aging Honda Civic, scanning the streets her daughter should have walked. The library's glow was shrinking in her rearview mirror as she slowed at every corner, headlights sweeping across storefronts and alley mouths. She rolled down her window, letting the cold ocean air in, and shouted into the night, "Sarah." Her voice echoed off brick walls and empty bus stops. Nothing. 10 minutes earlier, she had convinced herself the phone battery had died. 5 minutes later, she was trying to rationalize that Sarah had stopped at a friend's house. But by now, dread had drowned out every excuse. Elaine was an ER nurse. She knew how quickly a normal evening could fracture into catastrophe. At 9:50, she pulled into a gas station and tried again. Call, voicemail. Call, voicemail. The sound of that automated message, flat and inhuman, scraped against her nerves like a blade. Finally, at 10:15, she flagged down a patrol car idling near the boardwalk. The officer was young, mid-20s, notebook half open on the dash. Elaine leaned into the driver's window, words tumbling out. My daughter, 17. She walked home from the library. She's not answering. Her phone's dead. Something's wrong. The officer raised a hand. Calm. Too calm. Ma'am, it hasn't been that long. Teens lose track of time. She's probably with friends. No, Elaine snapped. She doesn't do that. She's supposed to be home by 9. She's never this late. Look, the officer said gently, it's barely past 10. Policy is, we don't file a formal missing persons report for a juvenile until at least 24 hours have passed, unless there's evidence of immediate danger. Why don't you give it some time? Give it some time. To a mother who knew her daughter's rhythms better than anyone, those words were useless. By 10:30, Elaine was parked outside the library, staring at the glass doors her daughter had walked through just an hour earlier. The lights inside were dim now, a janitor mopping near the entrance. Elaine went in, begged him to check corners, bathrooms, any nook Sarah might have hidden in. He shook his head. No one inside. She walked the block 3 times, checking behind vending machines, peering through the windows of closed shops. Nothing but silence and the low crash of waves beyond the boardwalk. At 11:00 p.m., Elaine drove herself to the sheriff's substation. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as she stood at the front desk, voice trembling but firm. My daughter is missing. Something happened to her. Please, file the report. The desk sergeant tapped at his keyboard, unconcerned. Ma'am, how old? 17. Okay. Policy says we wait 24 hours before escalating. 90% of the time, they turn up safe. Elaine's voice rose, sharp enough to slice through the hum of the lobby. She's not 90%. She's Sarah. She doesn't vanish. Something's wrong, and every hour you make me wait is an hour I may never get back. People in the lobby turned their heads. The sergeant sighed, promised to make a note, and told her to get some rest. Rest. By midnight, Elaine was back on the streets, driving the same loop. Library, Walnut Avenue, the Roastery Alley. Home. She pulled over, got out, called her daughter's name until her throat burned. The only answer was the slap of waves against the pier. At 2:00 a.m., her car still rolled through neighborhoods, headlights raking across porches and trash cans, searching for any sign. A hoodie sleeve, a backpack strap, anything. She tried Sarah's phone again. Still dead. By dawn, Elaine's body ached from exhaustion, but her mind was locked on a single truth. If something terrible had happened, those first hours were the only window to stop it, and those hours were gone. By the morning of April 13th, Santa Cruz County Sheriff's Office had a new case file open. Missing juvenile, Sarah Holden, age 17. The words looked routine on paper, but to Detective Marcus Bennett, the details were anything but. A teenager, disciplined and predictable, vanished without warning, leaving behind nothing but a dead phone and a mother's certainty. Bennett was 15 years into his career. He had seen runaways, domestic disputes, teenagers sneaking off to friends' houses. But the tone in Elaine Holden's voice, sharp, unwavering, cut through the usual noise. Something about this wasn't typical. He began at the library. Security footage from April 12th showed Sarah at a corner table, head bent over a calculus book. At 7:46 p.m., her friend Maya Ortiz packed up and left. At 8:37, Sarah approached the counter, slid an anthology of American poetry across the desk, and checked it out with her student card. The timestamp matched exactly when she left. A camera by the door caught her stepping into the night, backpack over her shoulder. She paused, just for a few seconds, glancing toward the street as if expecting someone. Then she walked out of frame. Bennett replayed the clip 5 times. That hesitation gnawed at him. He called Maya back in. She sat nervously across the table, twisting a bracelet on her wrist. "Tell me about Sarah," Bennett asked. "What was she like that night?" "Normal," Maya said. "Quiet. Focused. She joked once about needing caffeine, but that's just Sarah. Anything unusual?" "Did she say she was meeting someone?" Maya hesitated. "When I told her I was leaving, she said she'd stay longer. But when I walked out, she was kind of standing by the window, like she was waiting for something." Waiting. The word matched what Bennett had already seen. The librarian added her own observation. Sarah had been a regular, polite, quiet, always alone or with Maya. But that night, yes, she seemed to linger by the entrance before leaving. Next, Bennett pulled traffic camera data from the streets around the library. Grainy feeds, not enough resolution to read plates. But one thing popped. At 8:45, a white work van rolled slowly down the block, ladder rack on top. The vehicle appeared again at 9:02, heading in the opposite direction. The taco truck owner, Luis Ortega, filled in the rest. "I saw a girl, looked young, near the curb. She leaned toward the van, maybe got in. It was dark, though. Can't swear it was your girl, but it looked like her height." The description sent a chill through Bennett. Too vague to be proof, but enough to shape suspicion. He turned to the digital trail. Sarah's iPhone logs showed normal activity until the moment it died at 8:56. Texts with Maya, some homework reminders, nothing alarming. But in the week before she disappeared, a series of short texts had arrived from an unfamiliar number. No name saved, no outgoing replies preserved. When investigators traced the source, they hit a wall. It was a Google Voice account, already deleted. Whoever had sent those messages knew how to vanish. Elaine sat in the interview room, trembling hands wrapped around a styrofoam cup of coffee. She never got random texts. She never gave her number out. Somebody was contacting her, and she didn't tell me. Bennett nodded grimly. We'll try to recover what we can, but it looks like the account was erased. A clue surfaced at a corner market. The cashier remembered Sarah buying a sheet of stamps and a bundle of vintage postcards the week before. Odd, he said. Teenagers usually didn't bother with snail mail. Sarah had smiled politely, paid cash, and left. Back in her bedroom, detectives found no letters, no postcards, no drafts tucked into drawers. If Sarah had written to someone, the trail ended wherever those stamps were meant to go. Bennett began pulling in her teachers. Most described Sarah as steady, thoughtful, engaged. But one math instructor mentioned something odd. Last week, she kept glancing at her phone during class. Very unlike her. When a text came through, she'd frown, then look out the window. Distracted. Another student remembered overhearing a hushed call in the hallway. A voice soft, serious. She almost never took calls at school. It stood out. Each fragment painted the same picture. In the days before she vanished, Sarah had been in contact with someone she didn't want others to know about. The detective mapped it out on his office board. 8:37, leaves library. 8:51, ring camera capture. 8:56, final phone ping, roastery alley. White van sighted between. Anonymous texts in prior week. Purchase of postcards and stamps. All arrows pointed to the likelihood of a secret meeting. Still, nothing was concrete. The van had no plate captured. The messages were gone. The postcards never surfaced. It was a puzzle where every edge piece was missing. Meanwhile, volunteers began canvassing neighborhoods. Flyers with Sarah's face, dark eyes, slight smile, hoodie zipped to her chin, were taped to telephone poles and coffee shop windows. Local news stations aired her photo alongside a plea for tips. Calls trickled in. A girl who looked like Sarah boarding a bus in San Jose. Another seen at a mall in Monterey. Each lead collapsed under scrutiny. Through it all, Elaine Holden's voice echoed the same conviction. She didn't run away. Someone took her, and were wasting time. Detective Bennett knew she was probably right, but with nothing but fragments, a blurry camera frame, an untraceable number, a white van lost in a city of vans, the case was already sliding toward the abyss every investigator feared. A cold file with no answers. By the end of April 2016, 3 weeks had passed since Sarah Holden's disappearance. The flyers stapled to telephone poles were beginning to curl in the salt air. Rain had streaked her printed face, turning her smile into a blur of ink. Detective Marcus Bennett still pushed forward, tracking every white van in the county, subpoenaing phone records, combing through tips, but each lead evaporated. The van sightings amounted to nothing. The burner number remained untraceable. The postcards Sarah had purchased never turned up. Local news ran Sarah's story nightly at first. Reporters stood in front of the library, microphones in hand, describing the 17-year-old who had vanished without a trace. Elaine Holden appeared on camera, voice raw but steady, begging for her daughter's return. I know Sarah. She wouldn't disappear. Someone out there knows where she is. Please, say something. Her plea echoed across living rooms in Santa Cruz, Monterrey, even up to San Jose. For a while, it seemed like the whole region was looking. Volunteers organized search parties. Students from Sarah's high school combed the coastal trails, the riverbank, abandoned lots. Drones buzzed over forests, cameras scanning for flashes of fabric. At night, candles lit vigils on the library steps, classmates holding posters that read, "Bring Sarah home." But weeks became months. By summer, the headlines shifted to other stories: wildfires in the north, political campaigns, celebrity scandals. Sarah's face moved from the front page to the back, then vanished entirely. Detective Bennett felt the pressure from above. Other cases demanded attention. Budgets were thin. His supervisors wanted him to scale back. "We've done what we can," they said, "unless new evidence comes in." He stared at the board in his office, Sarah's photo in the center, surrounded by arrows pointing to van, alley, postcards, Google Voice number. None of it connected. It was a map of dead ends. Meanwhile, the internet picked up the trail. True crime forums debated theories late into the night. Was Sarah lured by someone she met online? Was the van part of a trafficking ring moving along Highway 1? Was the yearbook photo, still undiscovered, already lurking in the background of some overlooked shot? Elaine read every post, every speculation. Sometimes they gave her hope. More often, they left her hollow. She refused to give up. Each morning, she drove the route between the library and her home, scanning sidewalks for anything: a lost shoelace, a scrap of paper. Each evening, she checked Sarah's bedroom, straightening the comforter, arranging the books, leaving the lamp on as if her daughter might return at any moment. Neighbors admired her strength, but behind closed doors, some whispered the words no parent wants to hear. Maybe she ran away. Maybe she wanted to start over. Elaine bristled at the suggestion. Sarah didn't run. She told anyone who would listen. She was taken, and if we keep treating her like a runaway, we'll never find her. By autumn, the posters were tattered. The volunteers dwindled. Even Sarah's classmates, overwhelmed by senior year and college applications, stopped talking about her in the hallways. Life moved forward for everyone else. For Elaine, time had stopped. Late at night, she sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through Sarah's old Instagram posts. The same photos of textbooks, coffee mugs, ocean sunsets. She read every caption, hunting for hidden meaning. Nothing, just ordinary teenage life. In her darker moments, she replayed the last phone call attempt, the one at 9:05 that went straight to voicemail. The cold, metallic voice announcing the number was unavailable had imprinted itself in her brain. It was the sound of her world breaking. By winter, Sarah's case was officially classified as a cold case. The file was stored in the sheriff's records room, a slim binder among hundreds. Detective Bennett visited Elaine personally to explain. "We'll never close it, Elaine," he promised. "If anything new comes in, if someone talks, we'll reopen every lead. But for now," he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Elaine looked him in the eye, voice quiet but fierce. "I don't care what you call it. I'm not done." Outside, rain lashed against the windows. On the kitchen table, the flyers lay stacked in a shoebox, ready for the next round of distribution. For everyone else, Sarah Holden had become another unsolved headline. For her mother, she was still out there, and the search would never end. 10 years passed. The world moved on, but inside Elaine Holden's small house near the Santa Cruz boardwalk, time remained suspended. Sarah's bedroom stayed untouched, books stacked neatly on the desk, her backpack hanging from a chair, a sweatshirt folded at the foot of the bed. Dust gathered, but Elaine brushed it away, unwilling to let her daughter's space fade. In April 2026, spring sun poured through the curtains as Elaine sorted mail. Among the bills and grocery flyers was a knock on the door. When she opened it, she found a young woman standing on the porch, holding a thick book. "Mrs. Holden?" the woman asked gently. "Yes." "It's Maya Ortiz." The name hit Elaine like a wave. Sarah's best friend. The last person to see her alive. She was older now, 27, with tired eyes and a wedding band on her hand. "I came across this at the alumni reunion," Maya said, offering the book. "It's the 2016 yearbook. I thought you should have it. Sarah's in so many of the pictures." Elaine's throat tightened. Her hands trembled as she accepted the heavy volume. "Thank you, Maya. You didn't have to. I wanted to," Maya whispered. "I still think about her every day." After Maya left, Elaine carried the yearbook to the kitchen table. For a long time, she just stared at the cover. Finally, with a deep breath, she opened it. Page after page, Sarah's face smiled back. Class photos, candid shots in the library, group pictures from the science club. Each image was a shard of memory, cutting and comforting at the same time. Tears blurred Elaine's vision as she traced her daughter's cheek in one photo. "You were so beautiful," she murmured. Then she turned another page. It was the section for school events, pep rallies, sports games, assemblies. On the bottom corner of one spread was a wide shot of the football bleachers filled with cheering students, dated July 29th, 2016. Elaine's breath caught. There, in the shadowed corner, behind the crowd, stood a figure, hoodie pulled up, hair spilling out just enough to catch the light. The face, half turned toward the camera, looked exactly like Sarah. Her heart hammered so hard, she thought she might faint. No, no, it can't be. But it was. The same almond-shaped eyes, the same small curve of a smile, even the outline of her backpack strap across the shoulder. Elaine scrambled for a magnifying glass from the junk drawer. With shaking hands, she pressed it against the glossy page. The image sharpened. The resemblance was undeniable. Yet the date printed below mocked her. July 29th, 3 months after Sarah's disappearance. Elaine pressed both hands over her mouth, tears spilling. If this was real, then Sarah had been alive after April. She had been there, at school, at a rally, just yards away from her classmates, and no one had noticed. Why hadn't she come home? Elaine stayed frozen for nearly an hour, staring at the photo. She whispered her daughter's name again and again, as if the image might answer. Finally, she snapped the book shut and grabbed her car keys. At the sheriff's office, she slammed the yearbook onto Detective Bennett's old desk. He was retired now, replaced by younger faces who looked at her with weary sympathy. "Look," she demanded. "That's my daughter. That picture was taken months after she disappeared. She was there." The detective flipped the book open, leaned close, and squinted. "Ma'am, the photo's grainy. Shadows. It could be anyone." "No," Elaine shot back. "I know my own daughter's face. That's Sarah. I'd stake my life on it." The detective sighed. "We can't build a case on a single blurry image. Kids come and go at rallies. Maybe it's just someone who looks like her." Elaine's fists clenched. "You don't understand. This is the first real sign in 10 years. And you're brushing it off?" She stormed out, clutching the yearbook to her chest. That night, she sat alone at the kitchen table, with the book open again, staring at the mysterious girl in the shadows. If it wasn't Sarah, why did it feel so certain? And if it was Sarah, what had kept her away? Fear? Control? Or something darker? Elaine whispered into the silence, voice breaking. Sarah, if that was you, why didn't you come back to me? The photo gave no answer, only a frozen smile, half hidden in the crowd, forever stuck on a summer day long gone. Elaine Holden could not let the yearbook out of her sight. For days, she kept it open on the kitchen table, the glossy pages slowly curling from repeated handling. Every hour, she leaned closer, magnifying glass trembling in her hand, searching for proof that what her heart screamed was true. The girl in the shadows of the bleachers, hoodie up, head half turned, looked like Sarah. But was it her? Or was it a cruel trick of light and longing? Elaine's first move was to show the photo to Sarah's old friends. Maya Ortiz came by, now a mother herself. She sat at the table, peering at the page under the magnifier. Silence stretched until she finally whispered, "It looks like her. God, it really does." "Not looks like," Elaine pressed. "It is her." Maya hesitated. "The thing is, Mrs. Holden, the date, July 29th. That's 3 months after." Her voice trailed off. "I know what the date says," Elaine snapped. "Which is why this changes everything." Other classmates weighed in when Elaine contacted them through social media. One said, "Could be her, but the image is too fuzzy." Another admitted, "I remember someone whispering that day. They thought they saw Sarah near the bleachers, but nobody believed it." That comment shook Elaine. If even one student had thought they spotted her, then she hadn't been alone in seeing the resemblance. Elaine carried the yearbook back to the sheriff's office. The new detective on the case, young and cautious, listened politely. He examined the photo, then shrugged. "Ma'am, with all respect, this is what we call pareidolia. When people desperately want to see someone, their brains find patterns, even if it's just shadows. This could be any girl with dark hair and a hoodie." Elaine's jaw tightened. "I am her mother. I know my daughter's face. You think I'm imagining this? You think I don't know the difference between her and some stranger?" The detective sighed. "We're not dismissing you, but we can't treat this as evidence. Without corroboration, other photos, video, witnesses, there's no way to verify. And it's been a decade." Frustrated, Elaine reached out to a private photo analyst, an ex-FBI forensic photographer. He ran the image through software, enhancing shadows, sharpening pixels. His conclusion was cautious. Facial markers line up, eye spacing, chin angle. There's about a 70% probability this is the same person, but the quality's too low for certainty. Legally, it would never stand up. 70%. Not certainty, but enough to ignite Elaine's hope, like gasoline on fire. Still, questions swirled. If Sarah had been at the pep rally, why hadn't anyone spoken to her? Why hadn't she reached out? Was she hiding? Was she forced to attend by someone else? And why did she appear only once, never again in other photos, never on video, never in the memories of teachers? Elaine played out possibilities in her mind. 1. Sarah had been alive, hidden, perhaps under control of someone who allowed her to slip back into the crowd for a moment. Maybe it was a test, or a cruel taunt. 2. She had escaped briefly, stood on the fringes of her old world, then been dragged back before she could act. 3. It wasn't Sarah at all, just a girl with similar features, captured in a blurry shot that tricked everyone desperate to believe. But Elaine's gut rejected the third option. She clung to the belief that Sarah had stood there, watching from the edges, perhaps hoping someone would notice. Experts argued over the psychology. A criminologist on a true crime podcast speculated if it was Sarah, it's possible she was being trafficked, kept under surveillance. Bringing her to a public event could have been a way for captors to test loyalty or to mock the family, showing how close she could be without reaching safety. Another expert countered, more likely, this is misidentification. The human brain is notoriously bad at recognizing faces in low-resolution images, especially when grief is involved. Elaine didn't care about probabilities or psychology. She cared about her daughter, and every fiber of her being told her Sarah had been alive in July 2016. The yearbook page became her shrine. She circled the girl's face in red pen, taped a photocopy above Sarah's bed, and stared at it nightly. Each time, she whispered the same plea, "Why didn't you come home? What kept you away?" But the girl in the shadows never answered. The debate spilled online. When Elaine leaked the image to a Facebook group dedicated to missing persons, arguments erupted. Some users swore it was Sarah, pointing to the shape of her jaw, the slope of her shoulders. Others mocked the idea, calling it a mother's delusion. The photo, once meant to capture school spirit, had become a battleground of hope and doubt. And in the middle of it all, one truth lingered. Whether the image was Sarah or not, it reopened a wound that had never healed. For Elaine, it was not just a face in the crowd. It was a ghost of the daughter she refused to bury. Years slipped by, but the yearbook never left Elaine Holden's kitchen table. The page, with the pep rally photo, remained bent, worn at the edges, the red pen circle glaring like a wound. Some nights, she would sit with the lights off, staring at the shadowed figure under the magnifying glass, whispering, "If that was you, Sarah, why didn't you come back?" No reply ever came, only the ticking of the clock and the distant hush of waves beyond the boardwalk. By 2030, most of Sarah's classmates had families, jobs, mortgages. To them, the girl who vanished in 2016 was a sad memory, a story tucked into the past. Even Detective Marcus Bennett had retired, his once cluttered case board now buried in the records room, labeled simply Cold Case, Holden, Sarah. But Elaine never let go. Each April 12th, on the anniversary of Sarah's disappearance, she walked the same route from the library to their old house. She stopped at the corner where the Ring camera had caught her daughter's last steps. She stood in the alley where the final phone ping had vanished. She whispered into the mist, "I'm still here. Are you?" Neighbors sometimes saw her and shook their heads gently. Some admired her perseverance. Others thought grief had carried her too far. But no one could deny her devotion. The unanswered questions still gnawed at the edges of the case. Who sent those anonymous messages from a Google Voice number? Why had Sarah bought postcards and stamps? And where had they gone? Was the white van a coincidence or a trap waiting at the curb? And most haunting of all, was the girl in that yearbook photo really Sarah? If it was, why did she never call her mother's name from the bleachers? Why did she slip back into the shadows instead of stepping forward? Perhaps she was under someone's control. Perhaps she was afraid. Or perhaps the photo was never Sarah at all, only a stranger, forever mistaken for a lost daughter. The truth is locked away in silence, carried by whoever crossed paths with Sarah Holden in those final minutes of April 12th, 2016. And until someone speaks, the mystery endures. Elaine, now older, her hair silver, still walks with a quiet determination. In her living room, the shoebox of flyers remains stacked, ready to be posted again if even the faintest lead surfaces. Sarah's room, though untouched, still smells faintly of old books and laundry detergent. Whenever you're ready to come home, she says softly into the air, I'll be waiting. It has been over a decade since Sarah Holden vanished on her walk from the library. Technology has advanced, faces have aged, the city has changed, but one thing remains unchanged. The questions. Was she taken? Did she run? Did she stand in those bleachers in July 2016, hoping someone would notice her? The answers may still be out there, buried in a memory, hidden in a photo, or waiting in the conscience of someone who knows the truth. And until those answers come, the shadow of Sarah Holden will remain part of Santa Cruz, a reminder of how quickly an ordinary night can fracture into mystery, and how far a mother's love can stretch across years of silence. If stories like this matter to you, if you believe these voices shouldn't fade into silence, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Silent Traces. Every share spreads awareness. And who knows, one click might help bring a missing person home.